Let me take a minute to talk about control because it came up yesterday again in a couple that I have mediated for, I have filed for, and I have watched the dynamics of this couple throughout, I don't know, 6 to 8 months. I've lost track how long we've been working together. But control is a big issue. It's a big issue in everybody's life every day. How much control do we have over our lives? And then when you get into a divorce situation, the dynamics of the marriage play out in the divorce. It's really uncanny to watch the way people get divorced, the way they talk to one another, the way they relate to one another. I get it. I get to see how it was in the marriage. And all too often, there is one person who is very dominant and the other person isn't. The person who is really dominant, if they have their own control issues, meaning they don't want to give up control of anything, not even the information about the finances for the family business. When it comes to divorce, well, the other person doesn't know as much as they need to know about the family business, so to speak, the family, the family investments and bank accounts and debt portfolio. I cannot tell you how many people, when they're ready to get divorced, have no idea what the debt level is in their family, and it's shocking. But I was even more impressed. I was with some colleagues last night that we meet once a month. Everybody's in family law. One person is a forensic accountant, one person is an attorney slash therapist slash mediator. The other person is a therapist. And then there's me, a document preparation company, meaning I'm a paralegal on steroids and a mediator. So when we were talking about this, we were just sharing information, not mentioning names. Everything stays confidential. But, we share our cases for help. And the forensic accountant said something that I found very interesting. And she said, "Do you remember a few years ago when I told you about a case that I had? We represented the wife, and the wife had no clue that the family had $36 million in their community portfolio. 36 million. And why didn't she know? Because they lived in squalor. They lived like they were ready to get evicted any minute. She was always on pins and needles that there was no money because that's what her husband told her. There was no money. So that's what she was working on. But as the case unfolded and disclosures had to be exchanged, she realized she's rich. Isn't that an interesting story? Okay. So now back to the normal case, because that was a little out of the normal. Back to the normal case where you don't have $36 million. You have like decent 401ks, IRAs, maybe some crypto that hasn't gone bad. But when, if the family business, the money that the family has, if that information isn't shared, there's a control issue because it should be shared. Nobody should be the person that controls all the information regarding finances. So I know this happens a lot when one person takes care of the family, raises children, the other person works, makes enough money in one home to be able to craft a decent standard of living. Maybe mom or the homemaker works a little bit, but still doesn't know what the primary earner makes and where the investments are. Now, you would ask, well, don't they file taxes together? Yes. And here's the other issue. The person who is the homemaker or is not the higher earner and does not make the investments, that person never looks at the tax returns. It's uncanny. That person chooses to remain in the dark. Because when you're filing joint tax returns, everything is there. All the money that you have is on the tax returns. Because if you have heavy duty investments, there's interest on the investments, taxable. So it's a little mishmash of a lot of things. It's the personal dynamic that the couple brings into the marriage. How forthcoming is each person on money? How important is money to each person? Because money becomes very, very important. It becomes a deal breaker. It becomes a weapon. Uh, uh, so that one person has most of the information and the other person doesn't. And now you come to the divorce. So, interesting case that I have where there isn't much money. There really isn't, but there is some community property money. There's a bank account that had money in it, decent money, and there was another investment that had decent money, and these were community property investments. And the person who owned those, or the person whose name was on those investments, really didn't want to give it up. Did not want to give it up. And it got so convoluted. And that person, by the way, was paying for everything, paying for my fee to file and get them divorced, paying for the mediations that I did. The other person wasn't paying anything. So the person in control of everything is the one who's paying me. And one of the reasons for the divorce is money. The person who earns a little bit more, and again, this is not a lot of money this person earns. We're not talking heavy, heavy six figures at all. We're talking regular five figures. And in California, that's not a lot of money, especially when there are children involved. So I'm saying this to say the control issue is interesting. So it appeared, and I'm saying using the word appeared because I only know what's in front of me. Any mediator only knows what people tell them in front of them. We're not supposed to second guess what's going on in the relationship, how the relationship worked out. I mean, we do know that what we see in the divorce is pretty much how the relationship probably expressed itself. Yes. But there was a power imbalance. And the person who is paying me is the one who kept control of the power. And when that person wants to move forward, it'll move forward. And if that person doesn't want to move forward, nothing's going to happen. So I suggested to the other person, well, I know money is tight. I am not, and I'm not saying this to be self-serving, but you do need more mediation. And you also need to change the power imbalance. And so I suggested to that person, the lower wage earner, not hugely lower, by the way, not ridiculously lower, but lower. I suggested, I said, look, even if this is a financial hardship, I'm not ridiculously expensive. Why don't you call for a mediation and you pay it for it this time? This would completely change the power imbalance. And the other spouse would actually, more than likely, take a different point of view. I mean, this is the step before you call the attorneys to say how can we force this to move ahead? How can we force a settlement? So I'm trying to avoid that because it's better if you make your own decisions. And it's ridiculously expensive in California, attorneys' fees. Most attorneys are around 500 an hour. Well, that adds up very quickly. But nope, the person who I suggested this to just said, no, I really don't have the money. I can't borrow it from family. All right, well, then I have to honor that. I'm certainly not going to argue that. This is their life. And, I don't live it. I don't pay their bills. So, of course, I must respect what I am told. But I am telling you, there are ways to change the power imbalance. And one of them is you have to pony up and be somewhat financially responsible for participating. Or number two, and this happens a lot as well, one person has the ability to work and probably will go back to work and did earn a decent income before the decision was you stay home and raise the kids. I make plenty of money to support the family. Um, when you have a situation like this, the fear is palpable that they have no clue what's going on in the family business. And again, when I say family business, I don't mean there's actually a business. I mean, the family is a financial entity. And the financial entity is their little personal business, how they make money, how they spend money, how they save money, how they support the kids and themselves, how they invest in real estate, whatever they invest in. That's what I'm calling the family business. That person is terrified, has no clue what's going on. So I want to say to anybody who's in that position, do not worry. The discovery process, the exchange of disclosure forms is there to help you. It is gold. You will find out what the family has and where your community property portion is once we get to the disclosure exchange. So don't worry about it. You know, as long as you know what your other spouse makes for a living, you're doing well. You are doing well. And I encourage any of you who are still in the middle of filing for 2023 taxes because we haven't hit October yet, please read through the income tax statement. Please use this opportunity to do that. And I'll take that a step further. You can request to read through previous years. In fact, that might be a good thing to ask for copies of previous year's income tax returns, maybe just the last 2 or 3 years. And by doing that, you will find out what you have. So do not fear. I know if you are in the dark about what the family has, you're going to feel completely out of control. Do not fear. The system, the process in every state will help you identify what you have, whether it's an equal distribution of asset state or a community property state. The discovery process, the disclosure forms, there's a financial one and an asset and debt one. Those forms will be your best friends to educating you about what you have. So I don't want you to live in fear. I really don't. And those of you who have the money, share the information. Just get your spouse out of fear, because the sooner you can get your spouse out of fear, the better the decision making is going to be about how to divide the assets and debts. And yes, debts are divided too. If you can do that, if you can understand the value in saying, look, I'm so sorry. I know we never sat down on a monthly basis and reviewed everything. By the way, my mom and dad did. I grew up in the stereotypical 50s culture where one person worked, one person stayed home and raised the family. And my dad really wanted to share this with my mother. He did not want to covet information because he felt that more information she had would empower her to be reasonable about spending money. My mother loved to shop. I get that from my mother. But he wanted her to budget. He wanted her to be knowledgeable about what he earned, where he invested. I don't know how well she did at that. I don't think she did very well at all, but he was the husband that wanted knowledge to be shared. So, any of you who have been controlling the assets and how debt is created, understand that it is in your best interest to share that information. Because if you don't, your other spouse is definitely going to at some point go to an attorney who will definitely pull the Band-Aid off and get everything they need to get. And it'll be expensive and you'll end up paying the bill. The attorney will file for you to pay the bill. So don't think because your spouse doesn't have money and isn't earning a living right now that that spouse will never get an attorney. Not true. The attorney will attempt to get attorney's fees from you. And if you have a house, they can easily put a lien on the house and collect their attorney's fees that way. So, exchanging information is golden. Understanding that nobody should have power and control over another person is key to making solid decisions, spending the least amount of money to do it, and putting your spouse, the spouse who knows less about money, putting that spouse in a confident position. That's where you want your spouse to be, in a confident position. And you want your spouse to trust you a little bit. I know the trust is broken. Once there's a divorce, we look at trust differently. It's normal, but you have to regain a little bit of trust just in the fact that you will be getting all of the information that you need from from the spouse who has the information. It's so important. And especially if you have children, you're going to want to make this a wonderful experience. You're going to want, if you can put your children first, if you can understand how vitally important it is for your children to feel confident that their parents are doing the best they can to treat each other well with kindness and respect, and also treat the children in a way that the children feel safe and loved and taken care of, you're going to change the family dynamic in a much more beneficial way. You're going to, without realizing it, keep the family intact, but in two different households. I mean, that's really the name of the game in this. If you have children, you're still going to be a family connected by your children. And so changing the power dynamic now so that your children feel like their parents are equally balanced in taking care of them. It's so key. It's so name of the game. It's where you want to be. But that control stuff is so hard to deal with because you must change the way you have behaved in the marriage. You must change that now while you're moving from married to divorced or married to legally separated, and to live in an equally balanced relationship going forward. It's the healthiest thing to do. So, control, not a good thing. Being in control of yourself, excellent thing. We all want self-control. So that's where your control should be invested. Self-control, controlling your anger, controlling your fear, controlling how you spend money, controlling arguments, controlling the way you talk to one another. Well, controlling your own part in that. That's where your control is. And that's a healthy, good control. But you cannot continue to try and control the other person. And you cannot live in fear if you're the person who feels like they've been controlled. This process will unfold in a way that will impress you in regards to the information you're going to get. You're going to know everything. Don't worry about it. And the one who has the information, you're not going to lose any power either, because the laws are the laws, and if you just deal with the law, it's there to help both of you. It's not there to empower one person over another. It's there to create an equal balance in your relationship. So hopefully this helps some of you listening. If you find yourself in an out of control situation regarding control, I hope I've given you some helpful tips going forward. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always, have an amicable day.